But here you are with a case of military presence at Jabin, and the assembly members say they feel intimidated, they feel compelled to confirm the president's nominee. What do you make of what's happening with, first, our confirmation of MMDCs, and secondly, the situation, the specific case of Jabin?
Well, it is quite sad. I mean, this particular batch of MMDC nominees took a long time. And so my thinking was that consultations were being held such that whoever will be nominated would easily go through and will be accepted by the people. Of course, if you do extensive consultation among the people and opinion leaders in a locality, it would naturally translate into popular acceptance of whoever has been nominated. But it turned out to be that maybe the delays were not really as a result of extensive consultations, and that's how come we're having some of these things playing out. Our decentralized governance system requires that our president nominates MMDCs to be confirmed by assembly members at the local or district level. And this is to ensure competence and local participation in the selection of who becomes an MMDC. It's also a countervailing measure to ensure that the president does not impose people on the grassroots. So over the years, this is what really is the rationale of having MMDCs being vetted and approved by assembly members. But we also know that there's been reports of several underhand dealings, threats, and cheating or the surreptitious exchange of money just to get the nominees approved at all costs. It's happened, I think, since 1988 that our local governance system was introduced. And this has really weakened our decentralized practices and contributed immensely in making the president, the executive head of the land, overly powerful and giving him a lot of powers like a political king kong. And so it is to deal with some of these tendencies that when I was working with the Institute for Democratic Governance, we proposed a direct election of MMDCs on partisan basis so that the people themselves and political parties would directly take charge of determining who must be an MMDC. Unfortunately, this hasn't gone through yet. Chief summoning members, assembly members, to explain for why they held a press conference to ventilate their grievances about heavy military presence and acts of intimidation. I don't think is the way to go. And asking them to kneel down to beg for exercising independent judgment and complete to air their grievances is completely unknown and at variance with our democratic norms. It is politically barbaric in my view, and it does other attempts to re-centralize our decentralized local governance system. It is also an attempt to make democracy subservient to some of the politically backward tendency of traditionalism. I mean, that practice is so anachronistic and antiquated. People have the right to hold press conferences to ventilate their grievances about whatever they don't like. It is within their rights. And no chief has the right to summon them to make them kneel down. You are trying to make traditional democracy subservient to backward practices of traditionalism. And this is not something that must be tolerated because the democracy is not a monarchy.
Yes, Professor Gyampo, the assembly member says, well, yes, one of the chiefs said they should kneel down, but it wasn't as if they were compelled. The paramount chief was unhappy that, despite the fact that he had spoken to them, they went ahead and organized the press conference. But one of the chiefs said, if they are sorry, then they should kneel down and apologize. And that's what they did. Is that wrong?
The man talking, and it appears that he was actually doing a PR, public relations, or damage control for what had gone on. Maybe he felt scared that if he goes out there to explain exactly what happened, it may put their traditional area in a bad light, or put the chief in a bad light. So I think essentially what he sought to do was to do a damage control. But the point is that it is completely unacceptable for anybody to attempt to make democracy subservient to traditionalism. It's the premise of our 1992 constitution elected that we choose democracy as a way to go. And if you look at the various Afrobarometer studies that have been undertaken, an overwhelming majority says that democracy and decentralized governance is the way to go to govern ourselves. Chiefs have a certain role to play, but they don't call the shots in this particular system of government. And so I find it difficult to understand why a chief will not be happy because people went to hold a press conference to talk about intimidation, and so they will have to be summoned before him, and they will have to kneel down. I think it is not something that I just cannot imagine how this happened. It's not something that might be tolerated. I think it must be condemned. You cannot gag the people, and you cannot prevent them from ventilating their grievances when they feel their lives are being threatened and when they feel they are being intimidated.
I mean, let me say that we've been joined by Professor Kwesi Anin, who is Director, Faculty of Academic and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Good morning, Professor Anin. And,
yes, good morning. Your voice is so low, I can barely hear you.
Okay, is it better now? Can you hear me, Prof?
Well, clearly, but...
okay, I'll get back to you shortly. But before I do, Professor Gyampo, so are you suggesting that under the circumstances, what should the assembly members have done when they were asked to kneel down and apologize? What should they have done?
No, first of all, I think the out of respect and courtesy honored the invitation, summoning them to the chief's palace. But when they got there, they should have explained that, well, they were not obliged to respond to that invitation. The chief's palace is not a court of law. And so, under democracy, I don't see why somebody would, by all means, be compelled that the chief has invited you and so you should go. You are. If the chief doesn't understand, if you've run afoul of the laws of the land, you should be taken to court, and court has the right to subpoena you. So they were not under any compulsion to heed to the summons to go to the chief's palace. But I believe that it was just out of respect and courtesy that they honored that invitation. And when the issue came up during the invitation, they should have just explained, and that should have been all. But to say that for somebody to command them to kneel down before the chief and to apologize for doing the right thing, I think it's completely unacceptable, and it betrays a certain ignorance even on our part as to the real place of the institution of chieftaincy in our democratic practice. I think it's a democracy. There are due processes and institutions that are put in place to handle grievances and to settle disputes. And these institutions must not be undermined by people being summoned and being asked to kneel down simply because they have held a press conference to talk about acts of intimidation in their processes towards confirming a nominee of the president. I think it's absolutely unacceptable, and it must be condemned in no uncertain terms.
Okay, let me get to Professor Anin. I'll get back to you, Professor Gyampo. But Professor Anin, so we're talking about the Jobbing MCE confirmation, and on Friday, the assembly members complained that there were 4 armored vehicles and 2 pickups of policemen there to superintend the voting process. They say they felt intimidated. First, should it be the case that when we're going to have MCEs confirmed, the police and military are deployed to these areas? Should we be concerned that is the case?
Oh, we should be extremely concerned because first, what is the basis for the presence of these two institutions? What analysis has been done and by who to show that there's a need for the show of force for people who have been democratically elected going about their business, but they need to be coerced by the presence of armed, uniformed forces to get their job done. I mean, that first threatens democracy. It does not inure to building strong, independent, functional democratic institutions. You see, democracy works best when it is not threatened or coerced. Democracy dies when, under the guise of performing our democratic responsibilities, we coerce institutions and individuals to function in particular ways and make particular decisions that are undemocratic, but are clothed in the garb of democracy. And I think that's a very dangerous and slippery path. And it's not only in this particular case. We've seen elsewhere where the police have been used to prevent people, even members of parliament,
Yes.
from playing their role. And I think this is a dangerous, slippery rope. Because, you see, in cases where there have been these slippages in which uniformed forces have they themselves been coerced into taking decisions and actions that they know are contrary to their vision and mission, it has not ended well. So we should begin the process of allowing these elections at the local level to progress openly, transparently, so that those who are so elected will be accountable to the people.
Okay. Now let's look at the threat. You talk about threatening our democracy. What threats do these pose to our democracy?
But what is the basis for people being armed to superintend the election of an MCE? Why were those people there? It is that presence that poses the threat. And the gradual acceptance that we can use armed people to get our way through these elections. No, this particular case is not the only case that this has happened. In other instances, people were giving money and they returned the money.
Yeah.
So the combination of implied force, okay, that presence there implies the possibility that there's an option for the use of force when necessary. Two, is that across all these votings for DNC, XYZ, QPW, we've also read that manufacturing, that people, so in some instances, people have even returned what they took. Those aspects of democracy. And when the rot starts at the ground level, at the local government level, then it becomes an embedded rottenness that is difficult to approach. But you see, when you've had these soldiers and uniformed forces
around these buildings, preventing some perceived to be against the NCE from going in to vote, then we are accepting that force is a legitimate tool, or having access to the tools of violence. It's a legitimate action, and then when you use it or threaten to use it to get particular end results, that process is also legitimate. My argument this morning is that using those things, those weapons of violence, and threatening to use them if and when necessary, hollows out the process. It hollows out our institutions and makes it easy subversion. And therein lies the danger.
Let's look at
democracy doesn't die from one day to the next. It is a creeping process that sucks out the energy, that sucks out the strength, and that sucks out the credibility of institutions and its process. We need strong individuals at the local level, all through the system, to be able to stand up against this creeping danger phenomenon of money and violence deciding the outcome of our democratic process.
Let's look at that danger that you talk about, the fact that the acceptance of the usage of force in compelling people to, vote in a particular way, and its acceptance could lead to possible subversion. I mean, that's your field. Help us understand how that works.
Been working for a very long time. I mean, the use of vigilante force is part of that process that is accepted and that is glorified. When you conflate access to the tools of violence with money, undisclosed, unidentified, untraceable money, these two can compel people to behave and act in different ways. But you see, those who are compelled to act in particular ways for a particular result don't also represent the totality of either a community or a municipality or a region or whatever. So you can have 20, 30, 40, 50 people making decisions on behalf of a region or a municipality or district in which the people say, this is not what we want. Now, when it continues over time, in which the will of the people consistently is overlooked and flouted, it begins to create a new culture and a new dynamic within society that says violence is good, that money, irrespective of how it is used to get particular results, is also good. It begins to whittle away our sense of belonging, our sense of identity. It begins to undermine the values and the norms around which we cohere as a people. And when those norms and values that we should cohere around become undermined, then principles which normally are unshakable begins to shift. And when it shifts, then there's nothing that we can hold on to. Then indiscipline, impunity, random violence is what will characterize us. And I think we are heading there. I think what we've seen with these elections at the grassroots level is very different.
So in effect, we are creating a fertile ground for subversion.
We have created a fertile ground. Yes.
Okay. I'll go back to you, but let me get to, Professor Ransford Jampo. So, Prof, yes, you've been talking about the election of MMDCs, and I mean, that's a conversation that has been had over and over again. But here we are faced with a situation where these persons are being compelled to approve. Now, the assembly member says he feels intimidated, he feels he's compelled to approve the president's nominee. There are those who have said for these areas where there's been some form of intimidation, the process should start all over again. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a legitimate call. The people should have the right to freely, assembly members should have the right to freely vet and to approve whoever has been nominated. If they were placed under any form of duress to approve, if they were enticed, if there is evidence to show that they even were made to act or decide against their own conscience, it becomes a legitimate call for the whole process to be started again, so that we ensure that only those who have the support of the grassroots get confirmed as MMDCs. I think we shouldn't do anything. See, the decentralized system of governance we're practicing at the moment has its own problems, and we should not fuel or compound the problems by some of these acts. Heavy military presence. I mean, just a confirmation of an MMDC nominee. I mean, what will we be doing to ourselves in a major national electoral contestation? I think the needless display of brute force just to intimidate people, to cow them into submission, and to vote or to take a certain decision is completely at variance with democracy, and it's not something that we should tolerate as a nation at all. And whoever dispatched these armed military there should also be brought to question. We should. It's just like the incident that happened when members, the whole Parliament House was brought under siege with heavy military intrusion on the floor of Parliament to go and do what we could not even explain. I'm sure they themselves didn't know why they went to Parliament to invade Parliament House. Some of us made that call that whoever gave that commanding order for the soldiers to go to the floor of Parliament should be brought to book, and nothing has happened. Whoever gives an order that armed military should go to surround a place simply because assembly members have met and they are thinking about how to confirm a nominee should also be brought to book. We should question that person. It is an abuse of the powers of the military, and it is not something that we must condone. As if using them as handbag carriers, using them as bodyguards, and using them as fufu pounders in the homes of appointees aren't enough. Now, we want to also use them to go intimidate people who are just performing a simple democratic task of confirming a nominee that has been put before them by the president. I don't know what is wrong with us as a nation. It appears that sometimes there is the penchant to run down and undermine institutions with impunity, and it's simply because people who give such orders for some of these infractions to take place are not brought to book. And that's how come we are where we are. And so I call on the authorities that those who despise the soldiers themselves should be made to answer a few questions as to why they should deploy armed people there to just go and intimidate people in that manner.
And talking about intimidating people, before I get to Professor Enin, at the University of Ghana, as UTAG University of Ghana, you've had cause to complain about the presence of national security operatives on campus during SRC elections, right?
Yeah, we complained about that. We said that the university has its own security arrangements that is competent enough to handle basic tasks like policing election among students, and they've done so over the years. If things are getting out of hand, they call for reinforcement, from the regular security. And so soldiers and police or national security operatives have no business invading campuses when they've not been invited. And that's what we said, and we insist on that. And it is, again, an abuse of the use of the coercive apparatus of state when security operatives would want to invade places or areas that they've not been invited to, and just to go intimidate people. It is unnecessary. I think we've shown clearly that we want to climb higher the ladder of democratic progression as a nation. And some of these acts that remind people of Ghana's dark political history, where the soldiers were governing, should not be countenanced.
Thank you, Professor Ransford Jampo. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me get to Professor Enin finally. So, Professor Enin, now, you've talked about how we have created a fertile ground. How do we reverse that fertile ground that we've created for subversion?
Well, I mean, let me make this point. These creating fertile grounds for something to take place takes a long time. It is sometimes deliberate, sometimes unintended, but it is that single drop of undermining institutions, of undermining processes, of circumventing established mechanisms, and people refusing to stand up to say, this is not the way it must be done. Let's not forget that weakening institutions and their processes and mechanisms and getting the public to turn a blind eye is a slow process. Over time, people will just look and shrug their shoulders. Over time, people will refuse to raise their voices because although there's not the overt use of force and violence, the indication that that force is available and can be used with deadly consequences as and when somebody wants, more often than not, serves as a control mechanism. So now people are encouraged not to comply with the rules and regulations so that the abnormal becomes the norm, that indiscipline becomes the norm, that corrupt practices becomes the norm. Okay, so when the abnormal becomes the norm, then you lay the foundation. Then there's a blanket tableau for anything and everything to happen. So that when I like the rather poetic physiology of my friend Redson. When he doesn't understand why we do what we do. For most people, yes. And I know that Redson does understand. I'm talking about Professor Jampo. But that was only a turn of phrase. When people create this tableau of indiscipline and the abnormal, the
the norm. You see, what they forget is that when states don't function, then corruption thrives, then indiscipline thrives. Although people are looking either for power or for extra money or for societal influence, what they forget is that at a point in time, the abnormal gets a life of its own, that you cannot control it. And it is that force where people now become so unruly, indisciplined, the culture of impunity is all over the place, backed by the culture of silence in which people are afraid that they will be brutalized and penalized. Then subversion gets the opportunity to thrive. And things have transformed so dramatically in the last 30 years that we are seeing forms and acts of subversion elsewhere where it is impossible to control. We are seeing Mali, we are seeing Niger, Burkina Faso, Guinea not so much because the government is very much in control right now. But the seeds of that subversion, the societal subversion, has been sown. And it's been sown across a lot of countries. And we need to be careful that we don't become one of them.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Kwesi Enin, who is Director of the Faculty of Academic and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. And so thank you, Professor Ransford Jampo, Associate Professor at the Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. So you've heard Professor Jampo, you've heard Professor Enin share their thoughts with us. What are your own thoughts? What do you make of the situation in Jabbing? Well, they're expected to vote. And on Friday, we're told of heavy military presence and police presence. What do you make of all of that? Join us on Twitter. Let's use the hashtag JoySMS and share your thoughts with us. We certainly will share your thoughts with the rest of the world. But let me tell you about Bobo App, because the Bobo App is finally in Ghana. And Bobo App has the most affordable rides in Ghana now. You can use Bobo App to order food, book airlines, vacations. You can also use Bobo to request over 30 different services at home, all from your Bobo Super app. Invite 20 friends today to use Bobo App and share 200 cities with them on the app. Bobo takes no commission from drivers, so drivers keep 100% of your sales. No other app offers this except Bobo. Download Bobo App from the Play Store or App Store now. Bobo, the app they be.
And whether you have an HR background or not, you can become a certified professional in HR resources. Getting certified as an industry professional means that you have mastered the body of knowledge in the field of human resources through training and education. Professional certification is a demonstration of your competence, commitment to excellence, and higher professional standards. Whether it is the professional or senior professional in Human Resources International, you're recognized by employers and industry players as a competent professional with expertise to respond to all key technical issues pertaining to people management for organizational growth. Take the big next step in your career and the Global Professional HR Certification in 6 months, weekend tuition only, physical and online options available. Contact the approved provider of the Global Professional HR Certification in Ghana, the HR Certification Center, to sign up. Call or WhatsApp 0244 822 855 0244 822 855 or visit phrglobal.com for more information.
Well, have you heard about the Orange Support Center? The Orange Support Center provides support to survivors of SGBV, including psychosocial support, legal support, and medical services where necessary. Call the Orange Support Center on 0800 111 222. It's toll free for all networks, dual networks. Do you know anyone who is suffering from a difficult marital separation and needs support? Then call the Orange Support Center on 0800 100 222. Do not continue to suffer in an abusive relationship. Call the Orange Support Center on 0800 111 222 now. They provide a range of services, including legal support, to help you get the needed support to prevent child neglect. If you notice gender-based violence somewhere or see something, please say something, because you might be saving a life. There is good news for victims of sexual and gender-based violence. UNFPA Ghana and the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. Now, they've established the Orange Support Center to support them. Call them now, 0800 111 222, to seek assistance because it attracts no charge.
And getting things done is simple with the right assist. Get the digital assist with ABSA digital banking channels and never miss a second of the Premier League. Sign up for an ABSA account, download the ABSA mobile app or dial *895# and start banking simply today. And as a first-time user, you earn points to win airtime every week when you get your banking done on ABSA digital channels. Be one of top 10 ABSA customers with the most points to win an all-expense paid overnight stay at a luxurious hotel with a digital assist. That's Africana City. That's ABSA. ABSA, the official African banking partner of the Premier League. Terms and conditions applied.
Yes, very soon we'll be. Let me just say a happy birthday to Martin Olu Davis, who's head of administration and HR of GOIL. From GOIL, they say a big happy birthday to you, Martin Olu Davis, and the staff and workers wish you good health and God's blessing. Still to come, we'll be talking about what compelled you to actually, decide to buy your house or build your own house.
Yeah.
And you've been sharing your stories. We'll share them also, and of course, you'll also be sharing your thoughts on the happenings in Jabbing. This is the Super Morning Show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Apply now for a degree at Central University, Ghana's leading private Christian university. Admissions are open for the 2021-2022 academic year. Degrees are available on our campuses at Mutual, Christ Temple Abosokai, and Kumasi. You can also enroll in our MBA with various specializations. Scholarships are available for needy but brilliant students. Call now on 0303-318-583. You can also visit our website at central.edu.gh for more info.
Payday, Ababiam, Ache big with better and amazing deals from Electromat on any LED TV, smart TV, home theater, refrigerator, freezer, gas cooker, washing machine, and all electronic appliances. Broom, Panasonic, LG, Samsung, Philips, Pico, Media, Nasco, and all the top brands at Ghana's #1 multi-brand electronics retail outlet. Electromat. Rush to the nearest Electromat showroom or call 055-275-5456 or 055-277-7905 to pre-order now. Electromat, your world of electronics. Payday at shit. Pay. Terms and conditions apply.
No victim of gender-based violence should be silent. Every human deserves dignity and respect. If your health, dignity, and security is undermined, you must seek assistance. Call the Orange Support Center for assistance on toll-free number 0800-111-222. This message is by the kind courtesy of the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA.
Hey, Bra Kofi, your ceiling be smooth, bright and fine, Papa.
That's an understatement. It dey blink like 80 carats white gold. This be Interface plasterboard ceilings. Smooth, bright, and long-lasting. Everybody wey dey come here, they fill am. Where they direct them go Interface Limited for world-class quality.
If you're involved in new property development, renovation, or decoration, the right place for you is Interface Limited. Call us on 0274-999999 or visit our website at
www.interfacelimited.net. Facebook, Interface Limited GH. Instagram, interface.limited.
Why do you allow coughs, cold, and flu to ruin your happiness? You need Summerlin Cough Syrup. Summerlin Cough Syrup will relieve you and your family from coughs, cold, and flu. Summerlin offers a whole range that provide relief for the entire family. Insist on your Summerlin in pharmacies and licensed chemical shops. Summerlin Cough Syrup from Danex Itin Starwin PLC. If symptoms persist after 48 hours, consult a physician. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Coffee in your cup. Enjoy on the set. The Super Morning Show is